in an unprecedented way in response. You know, I've been all over this country in the last number of months, and what I've learned is the American people do not want to live under an oligarchic form of society. The American people and the men and women who put on the uniform of this country fought and died to defend democracy. And we are not going to let Trump take us to an authoritarian society. And the working people of this country understand there is something profoundly wrong when you have a president who gives $1 trillion in tax breaks to the top 1%. And then makes massive cuts to Medicaid. 15 million Americans, including 50,000 right here in West Virginia, are going to lose their health care. Cuts to nutrition, literally taking food out of the mouths of hungry kids. Now, we understand that what's going on right now is an acceleration of what's gone on in this country for the last 50 years, and that is the people on top who have never, ever had it so good, they're not satisfied. They got a couple of $100 billion, not enough. They want more and more, and they, in their greed. See, these are very religious people. And their religion is greed, and they worship on the altar of money. And they don't care if they throw people off of health insurance. And you know what happens? Let's be frank. Let's throw it out on the table. When you throw 15 million people off of the health care they have, working class people, low income people, you know what happens when people can't go to a doctor when they need to? They die. Study came out from Yale and the University of Pennsylvania estimating that up to 50,000 people a year will die unnecessarily because of Trump's big, beautiful bill. So, but it is not just that bill. What's gone on in the last 50 years of this country is there has been a massive transfer of wealth from the bottom 90% to the top 1%. The Rand Corporation, not a particularly progressive group, estimates that that transfer of wealth was $75 trillion from the bottom 90% to the top 1%. Now, in that same period, and this is really unbelievable, think back what life was like 50 years ago and all of the technological improvements that we have seen making workers far more productive. But you know what's happened during that period? Despite all of that increase in worker productivity, real inflation accounted for. Weekly wages for American workers are lower today than they were 50 years ago. So what we are here tonight to say loudly and clearly, we want, we demand, we will have an economy that works for all of us, not just the 1%. Now, like many of you who are here today, and certainly the majority of the people in West Virginia, I grew up in a working class family. My dad had a job, went to work every day, just never made any money. And we, lived paycheck to paycheck. There was great stress in our household. I remember the fights between my mom and my dad about money all of the time. And right now, and by the way, that reality of living in a rent-controlled apartment and seeing what stress does to families that don't have money, that has motivated my political life, because I know and you know, and this is really, again, quite incredible, that today in the richest country in the history of the world, 60% of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. Anybody here living paycheck to paycheck? All right. So you all know what that is about. What it's about is that you wake up in the morning and you're saying, am I going to be able to pay the rent at the end of the month? Am I going to be able to buy the decent quality food my kid needs? And what happens if somebody in the family gets sick and I have a large deductible? How am I going to pay that? I can't go to the doctor. My mom's sick. She can't afford prescription drugs. What am I going to do? And right now, throughout this country, there are millions of people living with massive amounts of stress. And do you know what happens when you live with stress? That's right. Now, here is a fact. I think many of you may know that pathetically, despite all of the money we spend on health care in this country, we have a lower life expectancy than other wealthy countries. You all know that? About 4 years younger. But what you don't know is that working class Americans are living 6 years shorter lives than the wealthy. A number of years ago, I did a hearing in the Senate. We had a bunch of doctors up there. And what they were talking about is what's called diseases of despair. You know what that is? And that is that when people live under constant stress, when every single day is a battle for survival, things happen to their minds, things happen to their bodies. They get sicker, physically sicker, mentally as well. And the end result of that is a lot of people in this country die because they're trying to escape life, and they're turning to drugs, they're turning to booze, they're turning to cigarettes, whatever. But the bottom line is that in the richest country in the history of this world, millions of our people are struggling just to survive and are experiencing enormous stress. Now, what our job is to profoundly take on the ideology of the corporate world and the oligarchs.